about the people here. I felt it for a couple of days. Does anyone else have that feeling about anticipation? Okay. Yeah, I've, like last night when I went to sleep, I saw 100 colors, and I saw a lot of violet color, which is the color of good spirituality. So I expect good things for you people. One of the most important things for a group like this is to feel harmonious with each other, and everybody here seems to have a good attitude. I don't sense any negativity at all. The fact that I've been picking up a vibration for a couple of days in advance is a really good sign that we have a really good group here. Always have good groups. I think my hope for each gathering is we will be able to take each group just a little bit farther in spiritual vibration than we did the year before, until we will eventually have some really interesting things occur. Okay, since the title of this is Soulmates, let's get on to that just a little bit. Yeah. We're leading to that. The reason we go into the creation is to really understand whether or not there's a soulmate or what a soulmate is. We have to understand what we are. And since we are reflections of God, what would a soulmate be? We hear a lot of definitions of a soulmate, like in the beginning there were twin flames created and they're separated, now we got to go find our twin flame, and that will be our soulmate, so we can be our true self merged. And there's several teachings on this thrown around.
It would be like the positive and negative images of a film.
Yeah, that's kind of the general idea. Your soulmate is your counterpart. But what is a soulmate? First of all, is there such a thing as a soulmate?
Can a monad
say
have more
no.
than one reflection?
Let's see.
Can a monad have more than one reflection? Am I representative of one monad that he and I together are the same monad?
Well, monad is a reflection of God to begin with. So monads are already out there. Monads are like potential gods. And there's many monads that haven't developed into human consciousness where they have consciousness at all.
But only one consciousness per monad.
Yeah, and these have to be stimulated. And so as we develop and we enter into the kingdom of God, our job is to turn our own back on the progression that we could make and turn around and help others. Because before we can move on, we must help those who are behind us. That is the rule of things, yeah.
Soulmates, could they be sharing the same dream?
Okay, but is everybody sharing the same dream? All right. Are we not all here? Yeah.
If we came from a place of unity or oneness to begin with, and we're coming into a place of polarity, don't we have to then become polarized or polarity so that we can enter into this place of polarity? So wouldn't we have to split out of unity to become polarized into a negative and positive so that we could have this experience?
Yeah, we have to enter into the world of polarities in order to even have form at all. All form we see around us is caused by polarity. You go to the formless worlds, you don't have really as strong as polarity as you do. We never escape polarity entirely, because even in the beginning, whether it was just the singularity, you have the singularity and then you have the possibility of creation. So you have a duality right there. Duality is never escaped in all eternity. There's always a duality. Even if you go back to the original point of creation, you have the singularity and then you have the possibility of creation, still making a duality. What is normally viewed as transcending duality is not doing away with duality, but balancing the dualities so that you can use them from a vantage point of balance. And that's what is the true transcending of duality. We never really do away with is creation, as long as there are worlds, as long as there are form, as long as there is the appearance of more than one life, as long as there is more than one dimension, as long as there is more than one plane, there's duality of some kind. You might remember,
Can you explain duality? You explain what duality is? You start with material.
well, it's explained in the first chapter of my book, The Molecular Relationship. Probably take me a while to go into that. But in the beginning, we have the point of the singularity, which is God, and he projects the energy of purpose. Now, DK, who we studied a lot on the list, says something interesting about the point of pralaya, which is supposed to be where we go back to our source and our beyond dualities. He says this is not a place which is not, but it is a place which is esoteric. And the word esoteric means hidden. So the point of pralaya, where we appear to be asleep, where the universe unfolds, there appears to be no universe, no us, no consciousness, he says it is not a place which is not, it is a place which is esoteric. In other words, the originating point, which is God, is not a place which is nothing. It's not nothingness. It's esoteric, beyond our ability to comprehend what it is. But when we go there, a higher part of ourselves will be able to comprehend it. And probably some type of duality there. But from our point of view, it's sleep. You know, in all life, there's sleep and wakefulness. Sleep and wakefulness. And the same thing in creation. In creation, we have creation, and then eventually everything dissolves and goes back to the source, and then it's created again. So you have a period of being asleep, and then a period of being active. So let me throw this out, is there's no soulmates the way everybody teaches. And why?
We're all soulmates.
Because, right, we're all soulmates. And what does this mean if we're all soulmates? Well, why is it then that people report, well, I met this fantastic female, we struck it off, and man, lightning struck, she's my soulmate. I mean, we just read each other's minds, finish each other's sentences. I mean, she is it. And there's nobody else that can be my soulmate but her. Is that true or not?
No.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Could it just be a remembrance of a relationship in another lifetime?
Right, that's generally what it is when, if you've got a positive relationship with a person in a past life and you died really loving each other, you'll meet each other again, there will be a fire there, and you'll think, man, this is my soulmate. You know, there's nobody in the universe like her. Well, on the other hand, if we say that everybody are soulmates, what does this mean? Does this mean that Philip, he's a good-looking guy over here? Let's suppose he meets a woman like that throw mama from the train go. Everybody see that show? And here he is, a good-looking guy. Could he be a soulmate with her? Could he fall in love with that throw mama from the train? Does anybody remember what her name was in the movie?
Mama.
Mama. Just call her Mama. Okay?
Yes, he could,
How could he do that?
if he saw her soul.
Yeah. But when Danny DeVito saw his mom in the movie, what did he see? Did he see her soul? Or did he see something else?
Saw her personality.
Yeah. And she had personality out the yin-yang. And that's all, even the moviegoers like myself, that's all we saw was lots of personality from this gal, and none of us liked the personality, did we? So how could she be anybody's soulmate?
You have to cut through the barrier that surrounds us called personality. Penetrate.
Okay, let's go to another point. Yeah.
Because she's a reflection of him.
Right. All of us have souls, which are reflections, monads and souls that are from the reflection of God. Now, when each of us progress, remember that monads help other monads, and what your soul is the word soul has a lot of misuse. And there's two ways to look at defining what soul is. Soul is that energy which is developed when matter and spirit interplay. Soul is not spirit and it's not matter, but it's the interplay of spirit and matter. And for us to have soul contact, we, instead of contacting matter, instead of contacting spirit, we contact soul, that interplay of spirit and matter. And this is the door that opens us up to the spiritual realms. And it's the midway point, the point that is sometimes called the point beyond dualities, because it's in between the dualities of spirit and matter. Where it interplays is soul. And this is the door to the kingdom of God. So what does it mean when people say, well, my soul told me this and my soul told me that, or they feel like the soul, they talk about the soul as an entity. Even many of the great writers and scriptures and esoteric writings will write about the soul, as like we're talking about an individual. There's an entity which is called the solar angel. And the solar angel, his consciousness dwells at the point where spirit and matter touch. And the solar angel is a being that has progressed in a past solar system. And he's progressed through all the things that we're now going through until he achieves relative perfection. And what happens when somebody achieves relative perfection is he will assist others to achieve it. So each one of us has a solar angel that works through the soul energy of spirit and matter where it interplays to commune with us. And our job is to open the door of soul through meditation, contemplation, prayer, right living, to open that door and have our consciousness penetrate the soul until we can receive instructions from our solar angel, which is kind of like our personal God. You know, when people receive an instruction from our solar angel, people think they're getting revelation from God.
Is that like a guardian angel, what commonly referred to, the solar angel?
And there are also entities in the spirit world which assist humanity, which are different items still than the solar angel. But these are also like people just like you and me. Like if you died, you might want to check in on your son. You know. But so there is a little interplay, but there's not as much contact with the dead as everybody thinks. But there are times when it is allowed to happen. And especially when the person hasn't been away from his body for a very long period of time. But when a person, after a person has been dead for a further length of time, he ascends through the etheric and up through the astral and up through the mental and prepares to be born again. But it's usually a short period after the person time dies that he maintain some type of attention on the earth life.
Define that short period of time.
It depends with a person. For a fairly evolved person, it's almost zero. For a person, an average person, it could be a longer period of time. After you die, you're still in your etheric body for a period of time, and depending on how earthbound you are will depend on how long that happens before that dissolves. And then you go to the astral world, and then your astral body dies. And then you go to the worlds of mind, and that dies. And your consciousness follows these bodies as high as your consciousness is. And if you're not on the plane of the mind, you will then go to sleep. When your consciousness goes through, when your livingness goes through these worlds. So you will follow, after you die, you go through a series of ascending through the various worlds there. And when you reach the point where your consciousness can't handle it anymore, then you go to sleep.
And that's it.
then you're reborn later. Yeah. And then we try to raise our consciousness up. And the key where we want to attend is we want to have a continuity of consciousness is what each one of us needs to see, so that we can have this continuity of consciousness throughout the whole period of life after death to the time of reborn again. But most people, the continuity of consciousness will end. For a very lowly evolved person, he has very low consciousness after he dies. For a very highly evolved person, his consciousness will continue until he's reborn.
Don't we enter into some type of service after we leave Earth?
Yeah, in the various worlds. See,
You said we went to sleep if we're the average Joe. And
well, many people don't go to sleep for maybe 300, 400, or 500 years after they die. It could be some period of time before you eventually go to sleep. Yeah.
So you feel like at some point in time, the person who is moving through these realms breaks off their communication and their connection to the earth?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Why?
What?
Because
Is that like detracting from what it is they're
well, a
doing?
lot of them break it up, isn't broken up consciously. When the people go into the right after they die, when they're in the etheric bodies, then they'll be aware of everything on the earth. When they, depending on where their consciousness is, when their etheric body eventually will dissolve and break down, and then they'll be left in their next body up, which is their astral body. And in their astral body, connection with the earth is much more difficult. In the etheric body, they're capable of maintaining some type of communication. But the higher up they get, the much more difficult it is to communicate with people on the earth, unless it's some very evolved soul.
That's because they have to put on the suits to be able to get that deep, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. See, so right after you die, now, I've had several people close to me die, and I felt communication with them for 3-4 days, and then it ended. And maybe others of you might have similar experiences. But it's because they go on. Now, one of the reasons for this in the scheme of things is if you're able to look back on your life or whatever, see her really upset that you're dead, and you know, instead of moving on and concentrating on other things, you think, man, I got to do something help cheer up. You know, all your attention would be back there on your loved ones. So this is why our attention is forced to on the other world so that we can assist there. And we go in a dream state called the David chain. Many people do that lived a good life. And in the dream state, it's actually a dream state there where all their wishes and dreams are fulfilled. And in this dream state, they're not aware they're actually dreaming. You know, and in this particular sphere, they fulfill everything that wasn't fulfilled upon the earth. If you wanted to be a famous rock star or something, well, there in the David chain, you would just be like Elvis or whatever, one of the Beatles, and have all kinds of adoring fans, and you would experience all these things there. And this kind of prepares you for your next life. But there's all kinds of different worlds. There's also hells there, because there's people that die in a really negative state of mind will go to negative spheres but it will be just for a period of time until they learn their lessons from it. Yeah.
One more question. Is Soul Review, read a bunch of books, I'm sure you have too, concerning once you leave Earth, you have choice, and you have a Soul Review, you can go have a party or whatever, and then have your soul Review, or using very simple terms. Do you believe there's a Soul Review after you leave Earth?
Right. Shortly after you die, you have a merging with your soul ranger. And then you see everything, every effect you had on your life. You have the life review. But then after the life review, you actually lose most of your memory. You only take about 3 main things with you. You take the 3 main lessons of that life with you. And so as you move to the higher world, you just have a really fuzzy memory of what your actual life was like. And this is so that you can focus on your next step you're supposed to take. And if you go to the David chain, You may incorporate a lot of your dreams in relation to this life, but you won't realize your dream. You know. Houdini may have went to the David chain and thought he was giving the combination, you know, that special code he was supposed to give to the psychics, and none of the psychics was able to pick it up. It's quite possible he went to the David chain and thought and dreamed he gave it to him, thinking he gave it to him, but he didn't really give it.
What's the purpose of a David chain?
It's heaven. It's the heaven everybody talks about, but it's just a dream. And so, to really achieve enlightenment, as the Buddha talked about, you have to go above the David chain, above him. Yeah.
Is that one of your books that you're talking about?
Not entirely.
So this is a new book you might be writing, like, just.
Yeah, there's so much to write about that I probably won't get it all done. But fortunately, a lot of other people have written a lot of good stuff too. The David chain a lot is taught a lot in theosophy, and also somewhat by, and I'll say David writings. And I think it's also from Hindu writings, somewhat. D-E-V-A-C-H-A-I-N, David chain.
And that's a dream state.
Yeah.
Spell it again, what did you say?
David chain, D-E-V-A-C-H-A-I-N.
Okay, that's.
Like diva?
Yeah, it's pronounced Diva or Deva, depending on. Yeah, David chain or Diva chain. I think the correct pronunciation is David chain. Well, when you achieve enlightenment like Buddha did, he went to the plane above the David chain. See, when you're concentrating on pure service to humanity, you don't need heaven. You bypass heaven because you don't really need it. You don't really need to fulfill fantasies. And now you're talking about the ego. You don't need to fulfill the ego's desires. And this is where the Buddha achieved. Now, the David chain is on the plane of still in the worlds of form, and we have, like I say, the physical, the emotional or astral, the mental, and then the Buddhaic world, and then the next one up is where Buddha attained the consciousness of.
So, in this dream state, we're just dreaming and we relive our fantasies until they come to a conclusion, and then we eventually decide to move on from there. If it's just a dream state, and if eventually we see the end of it through ourselves, couldn't we, through meditation, visit our fantasies, play them out in this life, and get past them here now?
Here now. Well, if you achieve a real successful life and achieve the goals that you really want, then you may not need the David chain.
Could we visit those fantasies through meditation? And, like, let's say I wanted to be a rock star in meditation.
So in your dream state is a little bit like a David chain. You know, you often fulfill fantasies in your normal dream state. Now, the life of God, the reflections of God, and the life of God crave experience so much that we can't even sleep without having experience. We got to even have experience during the dream state. You know. The life of God craves experience. So think on that. It's an interesting thing to think about. That we can't even sleep without dreaming up new experiences.
So are you saying communication is like two-way, even as our experiences are communicated back to God and He participates in them? His experiences come forward to us.
He has no experience outside of us. He experiences through us. Now, He in His unreflected state is just a state of peace and oneness and bliss. But that's why He's created us, so He can have some things a roller coaster ride.
How do we know
Yeah.
that we reached the plane of enlightenment past the Vedic tells us?
When you don't care what happens to you.
Say it again.
Say that again, please.
When you don't care what happens to you.
What's the question?
She asked the question, how do you know when you've achieved enlightenment? I said, when you don't care what happens to you.
This is past the debate.
Are you sure that's right?
Oh, you're
Yeah. What's your name again?
Karen,
Karen, okay.
I think it could be worded a little bit different, not so much that you don't care about what happens to you, but you let go of your attachments to things, your attachment to an expectation of an outcome, or your attachment to a form, for example, my attachment to the form I called my son who
Right,
passed.
I was just saying that to kind of make a point, but you're right in the fact that even Christ cared about things as enlightened as he was. But what I mean by that is you're not attached to things, so that if you see that something needs to be done for the benefit of humanity, you will allow yourself to lose your life. Remember, Christ said, "He that loses his life for my sake shall find it, and he that seeks to save his life shall lose it." In other words, true enlightenment is when you're willing to let everything go for the greater good. And when you have that state of mind, that you're willing to let everything go, whether it be your wife, your kids, your job, your money, your house, your life itself, when you're willing to let all that go for the greater good and sacrifice it, then you've made a great step toward it.
Does that mean even letting someone torture you?
Well, you'd be willing to do whatever is necessary for the greater good.
Oh,
You
okay.
know, and hopefully none of us have to have that happen.
Okay.
You say that another way of putting that, going back to this concept of attachment, is that you've lost attachment to real personal desires, but you shifted your attachment to the betterment of the whole or the will of God. You're
Yeah.
still attached, but just to something higher.
That's a good point. Larry says we're just shifting our attachment from self to maybe being attached to the greater good. That's true. You know, it's a series of new attachments, perhaps we could say. We're attached to our life, and then we switch our attachment to the greater good. But then later on, we find the life of the greater good. There's something above that, so we switch our attention. We keep switching our attention until we get to the whole one life. Yeah.
So maybe there's a choice of service or the dream state for the data chain, and it's our choice based upon, I guess, where we are.
Yeah, when you enter the David chain, it's really not your choice. You just gravitate there because of your desires. If you have unfinished desires, unfulfilled desires, you will gravitate to the basic idea of heaven, where your desires will be fulfilled, and that will be heaven to you. And then when all of your desires are fulfilled and you don't need it anymore, then maybe you'll move on, you'll awaken and move on to something higher, or prepare for another life. Yeah.
Davis, that's the word for little intelligences, is that right?
Devas are from very small, infinitely small lives to great lives. They're the builders of the universe. They're the building lives that give form to everything there is. And there are many angels are called devas. The advanced devas are like angels.
So we could be then building our own David with these thought forms called desires, which is why it's called the David chain. I'm just grasping here.
Yeah, there's certain amount of truth to that. That the David chain is built out of desire, energy, and out of the Deva lives.
We created
We don't actually create them, they gravitate to us. Like your body is built of Devas.
like attract to like.
Yeah, your whole body is built of little Deva lives. And they have gravitated to you. You didn't actually create them, but they gravitate to you. You pull the pieces together.
I got too many of them.
You got lots of pieces.
But the desires are illusions, right?
Yes and no. The way most people think of desire, there's illusion behind it somewhere.
Oh, I know.
You talked in the past about how we're moving out of the age of sacrifice and into the age of service. How does that tie in with talking about being willing to sacrifice whatever to reach enlightenment? Because to me, that sounds kind of old age-ish. You know, that you're going to sacrifice everything to reach enlightenment. That when
Yeah, the reason she's saying this is the keynote of the Piscean age was sacrifice. The keynote of the New Age is something different. That doesn't mean we leave behind sacrifice. It means we take the best of the old age and incorporate it in the new. Now, the negative part of sacrifice is we see it in the religions today. People give lots of money to their minister, and the minister uses it to abuse children or whatever. So a lot build stone buildings that really don't do a lot for anybody. Or Jimmy Baker misused all the money, you know, that type of thing. So people are sacrificing. The negative aspect of sacrificing, people are blindly sacrificing. The money is misused. Okay? But true sacrifice is where you are willing to give in a way that what you give will be used fruitfully. That's the true lesson of sacrifice. And that's what we were supposed to have picked up over the past 2,000 years, how to do that. And then we move it in the age of Aquarius, and the keynote word of the age of Aquarius is service. So we must take the idea of sacrifice and incorporate it with service. And the keynote of this age is when we sacrifice, we use that sacrifice to serve and create a cause and effect so everything comes back to us. And Jesus talked about this. He says, I have come that they might have abundance. Okay, so he came so that we could have the abundant life, he said. And that abundant life he was talking about wasn't during the Piscean age, but he was looking forward into the Aquarian age. The Aquarian age is the age of abundant life, where we will serve and be recompensed for our service. And business is evolving into this. Just a few centuries ago, business was very selfish, and you know they had slave labor and labor of young children, and the conditions were so bad, people only lived to be about age of 30, and they died terrible deaths. And now, business is the service is reciprocal. People are getting stock options, they're participating. Many businesses are employee-owned, with employees having a voice, and employees are getting a greater voice. So in the Aquarian age, business will turn, despite the fact that it's condemned by so many people, it's evolving and will evolve into a great service for humanity, where people will serve and then get a recompense for their service. And it will be a very exacting recompense. Unlike in the Piscean age, you gave everything and didn't get anything back except maybe in heaven somewhere. Jesus sent his apostles out, they all got killed and drugged through the streets, and they didn't seem to get any reward at all. But he said in the kingdom of heaven, speaking of the future Aquarian age, you will get your reward. And all these guys will come back and they'll have